On Tuesday, we talked about the moral strengths and weaknesses of markets, and we listed a couple of moral strengths. One moral strength for sure, without a doubt, is that markets maximize freedom. Unregulated markets, that is, without government intervention, equip and empower individual persons to make choices that they see as being in their own best interests. The examples of market solutions that we looked at on Tuesday included things like airport security lines, where the market solution was that some people pay for a special pass in order to get through more quickly. Examples also included tollway lanes on Houston highways, where the market solution was that people who pay for a particular toll pass get faster access in the tollway lanes. Doctor appointments are another example where you don't have to wait for a long time for your doctor appointment if you pay for concierge services, and the market solution maximizes the individual liberty of each participant. We also looked at how markets maximize efficiency, and this is a result of their superior information aggregation mechanisms. Markets maximize efficiency for the society as a whole because each individual participant in the market is trying to maximize his or her own well-being. Each seller, each buyer, they are thinking of their own interests, trying to maximize their own well-being. And the idea is that the society as a whole is much more efficiently run, since information is more efficiently dispersed that way, and since each individual participant ends up doing what he or she thinks is best given the circumstances. We looked also, though, at least one moral weakness, and we're going to cover a second one momentarily. The moral weakness that we looked at is that markets tend to discriminate against certain kinds of people. In particular, those who don't have means. So if you look at the examples over here on the right, these three examples, the market-based solutions in these examples discriminate against those people who don't have the ability to pay for the faster way of achieving the service. Now, some of those people might really, really want to experience the service, but it doesn't really matter if they really, really want to experience the service. Still, they don't have the means to do so. When I was a little kid, I was a really big Texas Rangers baseball fan. Okay, I still am, although not quite as big a fan. I was such a big fan that I had memorized from day to day all the batting averages of all the Rangers in the starting lineup. I also knew from memory all the pitcher ERAs. I was a really big Rangers fan. And my dad, who was not really that much of a baseball fan, was an indulgent father who took me to about 2 Rangers games each year. When we went to the games, though, we sat in the outfield in the nosebleed section, so far away from home plate that we had to use binoculars to see the action. There I was, 9-year-old me. In a certain sense, I was always just overjoyed to be at the ballpark. But in another sense, looking back, a certain dynamic is evident. At the ballpark at the time, there were lots of people who sat real close to the action on the first and third base line. Some sat behind home plate. These seats were very expensive. And then there was little old me, 9-year-old me, sitting there in the outfield, upper deck, nosebleed section. Now, who wanted to see the action up close and personal the most? The people who sat on the first base line, or me in the outfield? It's all equal? No way, man.
I mean, they wanted to see it, but you also did want to see it because your dad didn't have the means to
So
your dad probably didn't have as much want to do that as
oh, okay, because my dad was involved. That's true. But I also didn't have the means to pay for those first baseline seats. And what capitalist markets aren't very good at is matching up products or services with people who have a deep desire for those products or services but don't have the means to pay. Okay, maybe that's what you're getting at, Matthew. Yeah. Okay, 9-year-old me had, I would say, looking back in retrospect, a much stronger desire to see the action up close and personal than probably almost all the people on the first baseline, but I did not have the ability to realize that desire by purchasing the tickets that were so expensive. So markets discriminate against people who don't have means. Now, having said that, I want to say on behalf of markets that markets are just about the best way, capitalist markets are just about the best way that human beings have come up with for efficiently allocating goods and services in a way that aligns as best we know how with the strength of someone's desire for the good or service. Okay, so for instance, let me illustrate that. Imagine it's your favorite musical act that's come into town. Okay, and back before COVID when we actually had live concerts. Okay, pick a pop star, somebody who you would go and see live in concert. Volunteers. No one goes to see live music? Green Day. Okay, so Green Day tickets run what? $100? $175? That's a substantial amount of money. Okay, enough money that if you don't really have a strong desire to see Green Day, it's probably going to be a deterrent to keep you from wanting to see them. But suppose you're a person of average means and you really, really, really want to see Green Day. You will pay the $175. That pricing system in the market has the ability to match up those people who really, really want the good in question, assuming they have at least moderate means, with the good in question. So it can efficiently allocate distribution of that good to the people who most want it. With some exceptions. 9-year-old me didn't have any means, although a great desire. And so markets do discriminate against those people who don't have any means at all or who have very little means, so little that it precludes them from being able to experience the good in question. Let me list a second moral weakness of markets before we get into today's material. So this is actually not from Tuesday's lecture. It's based, though, on Chapter 1, which we did cover on Tuesday. I just didn't have time to list this second moral weakness. Okay, let me give you an illustration here. Imagine that you are going on a business trip. And the town that you're going to, let's say you're flying to Atlanta, is the town where your old friend from high school lives. You haven't seen this friend in several years. And you call him up and you say to him, "Hey man, we should do lunch." And he's like, "Yeah, it'd be so great to get together with you again. But you know, I've got a real busy schedule this week. This week it's hard for me to make time for that." And you listen to his reasons and you think, wow, you know, he wants to do lunch, but not real badly with me. So you say to him, "I'll pay you $170 for doing lunch." Hey, Daniel, we've got seats in the back. Now, if you're like me, if someone offered to pay me $170, an old friend from high school, to do lunch with him, I would immediately feel as though this was a mercenary offer. There's something that just doesn't feel right about bringing friendship within the calculus of money. Okay, maybe you jump at the offer. Maybe you're a bit hardcore business type who would be like, "Yeah, pay me to be your friend." But most of us are probably going to say, "No, you don't have to pay me. That's cheapening the friendship." What is it about friendship that makes it feel dirty or cheap when someone offers money for friendship? Why does it feel dirty or cheap? Can someone articulate for us what precisely the dynamic is there? Daniel.
Well, a friendship, I think, well, I don't know how much of this, I don't even talk about this, but in my opinion, friendship is something, like when two or more groups of individuals shares a common interest or have a similar worldview or whatever it is that, and then they can, like, whether you can say hang out or work together, and then that's what I would call friends, and they would share resources or news or anything, opportunities and stuff like that. But when you add money into it, it kind of makes it into a business relationship and then creates a business environment and turning what is not business related into a business related
Good.
thing.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I think as well. So most friendships, if they are healthy friendships, arise out of organic grounds. Like Daniel was mentioning, people running alongside each other in the race of life find themselves headed in the same direction. They share certain goals and interests, and they use those goals and interests as a basis for becoming friends with each other. But money has a way of reducing the non-monetary aspects of friendship that make friendship special into just an exchange of self-interest, where it's just about personal aggrandizement. Okay, and so arguably, bringing markets into the equation can do harm, or at least can corrupt the things that they touch. So let's call this point as a moral weakness: markets corrupt non-monetary enterprises. Let me offer you as another illustration an exercise that I think I may have done earlier in the semester. I can't remember. If I didn't, I'll do it now. Imagine that you are out there scoping out the dating market, and you identify somebody who's a prospect. You could go on a couple or 3 dates with them, see what they're like. Okay? And, early dating is always about information gathering, along with seeing if you have shared interests and if it's fun to be around someone. And you realize pretty quickly after going on a date or two that this person is not an ideal candidate if you want to get serious and work towards marriage. Okay, maybe you realize this person is going to be messy. This person is not going to be emotionally involved. I'd be living alongside this person, but there wouldn't be emotional intimacy there. Maybe this person is pretty lazy. Maybe this person wouldn't necessarily be a good parent. Okay, now, you think to yourself, well, this person's got good morals. This person's not going to cheat on me. So it's not that bad a marriage candidate. Okay, that's pretty bad. But this person is pretty clearly not ideal. It would definitely be mediocre. It would be settling. We'll call it settling. And you think to yourself, well, I'm not going to settle. I'm going to hold out. And then you find out that this person has money. Lots of it. Would you settle in marriage for $1 million? Anybody settle for $1 million?
Maybe 10 million, I'll think about it.
Would you settle for Daniel's $10 million? This person had $10 million to offer?
Make
10 million?
100 million and I'll do it.
Marriage is beyond. You're a hard bargainer. Marriage is beyond $10 million in price. Let's make it Daniel's $100 million. For $100 million, would you settle in marriage? Oh, some people aren't being honest. Some people are really not being honest at this point.
Yeah.
You get bored with the person.
You get bored with them, but you got $100 million.
Well, if you're worried about getting bored after getting married, then you should probably get married before you pass away, so that way you just enjoy that part of marriage and never get bored of it, and then you just go.
Okay, nobody's raised their hand. $1 billion.
Oh, no, I raised my hand.
Oh, you raised your hand for 100 million. Okay.
Me too, yeah.
You did too as well, Diana. Okay. Would you settle in marriage for $1 billion?
No,
Oh man, come on. Some people aren't being honest.
I am being honest.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your response? You would?
I would not.
Oh, you would not settle for $1 billion?
I
This
am.
is a hypothetical scenario, man. I think probably if we were brutally honest, most of us would settle for $1 billion. Again, it's not somebody who's going to cheat on you. Just somebody who's going to live alongside you. It's like a roommate, not emotionally intimate, kind of lazy, kind of messy. Not an ideal candidate, but not a cheater or something. All right, $1 billion. Now, probably the reason why some of us were afraid to raise our hands is because this whole exercise felt kind of icky, didn't it? Because marriage should be beyond price. It shouldn't be brought into the calculus of capitalist markets. Okay, or so we would like to think. Markets corrupt non-monetary enterprises. The whole non-monetary aspect of marriage, okay, and there are lots of different facets of marriage. I say this as a man who's been happily married for about 8 years now. The whole non-monetary aspect gets reduced to self-interest when money gets involved, because money has a way of expressing whether something is in your self-interest or not. Actually, believe it or not, it was not until really the maybe late 19th, early 20th century that the idea of marriage as a romantic thing got going. For most of human history, marriage was all about monetary exchange. Okay, you've read about in history the dowries and bride prices and things like that. Oh, it was totally about all the exchange of cattle and all that. That was totally about monetary exchange. That was what the marital enterprise was for a lot of human history. Okay, let me offer you one more example of this. One more example of ways in which the involvement of money in the form of capitalist markets arguably corrupts non-monetary things. We have here in the United States organ donation. Okay, everybody's familiar with this? You can donate a kidney, you have 2, and you can save a life. Okay, you can donate bone marrow, that's not an organ, but you can also save a life that way. Okay, and there's also an opportunity when you fill out your driver's license paperwork to check whether or not you want to be an organ donor. And that means that if you're in an accident and the paramedics arrive and they look at your ID and they see that you're an organ donor, they decide not to resuscitate you. No, I'm joking. Okay. Okay. All right. So there are lots of arguments out there that the whole organ donation scene could be improved upon if we were to introduce the calculus of the markets to organ donation. Okay, I don't know if you know this or not. Probably most of us don't. But there's actually a shortage of most organs. Okay, or the kinds of organs that people need to, to live. They have to wait in line, sometimes for months at a time. Okay, maybe they need a liver transplant and they have to wait several months because there's a shortage. So the argument has gone, well, what if we actually use the calculus of markets and maybe people could sell their kidneys? Okay, maybe they could make money off of the sale of organs. And this would make the market more efficient and would close the gap, the inefficiency gap, between the people who are waiting in line for the organs, waiting in line. Whenever you see waiting in line, that's a sign of an inefficiency because it means there's more demand for the product than is product available. Okay, we close the efficiency gap between the people who are waiting in line and the people who are selling the organs. Okay, maybe we could hawk kidneys on eBay. Sell it to the highest bidder. That would be the freest of free markets, wouldn't it? Just make it a public auction. What do we think about that sort of a proposal? We have something like that right now already in the reproductive labor market. You can sell eggs if you're a female. You can sell sperm if you're a male. You can get paid a lot for these things, depending on who you are. A friend of mine who's a Princeton graduate says that, she tells me that if you have an Ivy League degree and you're female, they will pay you $25,000 an egg, as an egg, if you're an egg donor. Ladies, don't do it. Oh, it's all about the genetics. It's all about the not everybody thinks that. So I happen to agree with you to some extent. But certainly not everyone thinks that. And if you have a certain kind of racial makeup, a certain kind of height and weight makeup, and an Ivy League degree, you can be a very, very popular egg or sperm donor. That it can make you a lot of money, actually. Not that you should. Ladies, don't do it. It will actually give you cancer later on. And there are movies that are made about this where like men have, I don't know, like 5,000 offspring and they don't realize it and all that, right? So this sort of thing is already actually happening in the reproductive labor market. So why don't we just extend it into other markets? What about hawking kidneys on eBay? For it? Against it? If we were to take a vote right now, if hawking kidneys on eBay could reduce the inefficiencies in the organ donation space in this country, would we favor it? Show of hands. Who would hawk your kidney on eBay if the price were right? I don't have any takers.
Well, I can't vote because I don't know the downfall, like why we currently don't do it.
We don't do it right now for several reasons. I'll mention them in just a minute. Yeah. Anybody? Nobody would hawk your kidney? Dude, you guys have big student loans some of you guys are going to have to pay back. You wouldn't have to have these student loans.
Yeah, but then when I get older, if my kidney fails,
Well, you only have one at that point, so you just buy another.
But then all that money that we got from it.
yeah, what?
It's a risk. It's a risk, but most people don't actually need both kidneys.
What if my siblings need one, or my mom or dad needs one?
Again, it's a risk, but all of life is a risk, isn't it?
Isn't it like a much higher risk since it's like kind of like a computer. You might not need two CPUs, but if you take, it's gonna be better if you use both of them.
Right.
If you just use one of them, because then one of them is being all the work put into it. You know what I mean?
This is fascinating that the objections against kidney sales are coming from people who are actually concerned about themselves and their own future well-being vis-a-vis kidneys, and not about the morality of selling a kidney as such. I think that's really fascinating.
Well, because then we're gonna be with them.
Yeah, true. Okay. So there is risk. There's risk in any business enterprise. Okay. If you sell your couch on Craigslist, I mean, you're risking that you're not going to be able to find another couch like that, aren't you? No, it's not a big
Comparing
risk.
couch to kidneys?
Yeah. It's a personal item.
The whole black market itself is kind of like prices. First come, first served. Whoever with the highest bid, comes in and grabs kidney, blood, whatever you need.
Sure,
Don't
sure.
report that. That was off the record.
Well,
That did not come from me.
fortunately for you, this video can't pick up voices that far away.
Okay, good.
But there's a lot
Um,
of risk with like if you were to sell your kidneys over eBay because there's a lot that goes into it. Like you have to be a perfect match. You have to have
we
you have to be
can,
healthy.
yeah, we can sift criteria for these things.
But, like,
We
how-
could regulate it. It wouldn't have to be an unregulated market. I'm not convincing people. Okay, it feels icky to me too. The reason why it feels icky to me is because it feels icky to buy and sell human parts. Okay, and I didn't hear that from anybody. Apparently, this is something that I alone feel. Okay, it feels icky to me to buy and sell human parts because, again, this might be quaint, but it feels as though humans ought to be beyond price. We ought not to be brought into the calculus of markets. There's something about bringing humans into the calculus of markets that feels degrading. Yeah, Daniel.
I do have a question, speaking of human parts.
Okay.
What do you think of wigs?
Of wigs? Like, what's wrong with them?
Do you believe if I tell them they're actually made of real human hair?
I think most wigs are made of real human hair.
That's what I'm saying. But so in some degree, you are buying and selling human parts.
Oh,
And
yes.
there's an actual big market of it.
Some people feel as though replaceable parts are different, though. Right? So the wig hair is replaceable. The kidney is
So
not
selling
something you
blood
can
is
grow
also
again.
okay in that case.
I'm sorry?
So selling blood is also okay in that case.
Yeah, some people would be perfectly fine with blood sales as opposed to blood donations, which is what we have in this country because it's replaceable. Mm-hmm.
My friend does, instead of donating, they're like, oh, I'll get paid for donating, or for giving blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would probably make the market more efficient in that more people would be motivated to sell than are motivated right now to donate. Although actually that's not uniform. Sometimes moving from donation to markets actually reduces supply because people who would be inclined to give freely out of the charity of their heart now become less inclined because they feel as though it's degrading for them to have to sell it. Okay, it feels degrading to buy and sell human parts. Okay, let's go ahead and open up the Sandel text to chapter 2, and we'll continue this discussion in the context of the second chapter. I forget that no one has the book. Okay, so I will open up the text to chapter 2. This chapter is entitled Incentives. Okay, and Sandel in this chapter talks about how introducing markets into non-market areas can actually bring about dramatically different incentives which might be of great value, at least in certain circumstances. Okay, so keep the kidney sales example in mind, and let me talk about some of these examples that Sandel lists in the incentives chapter. Okay, so if you haven't gotten a chance to read the Sandel text, please catch up over the weekend. This will all be testable material, including some examples listed in the Sandel text that we might not be able to get to in class. Okay, let me read from pages 48 and 49. Recently, many economists have set themselves an ambitious project. What economics offers, and here they're talking about capitalist economics, is not merely a set of insights about the production and consumption of material goods, but also a science of human behavior. At the heart of this science is a simple but sweeping idea. In all domains of life, human behavior can be explained by assuming that people decide what to do by weighing the costs and benefits of the options before them, and choosing the one they believe will give them the greatest welfare or utility. That is, in the capitalist way of thinking, all of life is actually a market-based arena, in the sense that all of life is an arena where people make decisions about what they want to do in life based on what they perceive as being most in their interests or the greatest utility to them. If this is right, Sandel goes on, then everything has its price. The price may be explicit, as it is with cars and consumer products, or it may be implicit, as with sex, marriage, children, education, criminal activity, racial discrimination, political participation, environmental protection, even human life. Whether or not we're aware of it, The law of supply and demand governs the provision of all these things. So are the capitalist economists right? Does everything have a price? And in some cases, it's just an implicit price, while in others, it's an explicit price. Does everything have a price? Is taking implicitly priced goods, like friendship or like marriage, and making them explicitly priced by actually putting a number on them, is that something that can reasonably be done? Is it something that makes sense as a way of conceiving of human behavior? Are the capitalist economists right that all of life is a market in this sense? Thoughts or reflections? Yeah, for sure, Diana. So the capitalist economists, as Sandel is describing them, would say, look, all of life is market-based behavior. Because in all of life, humans decide the course of action that they want to take based on what they perceive as being in their best interests to maximize their personal utility. In some areas of life, the price of whatever good or service or resource humans are considering is explicit. If you're buying a car, there's an explicit price tag that you actually pay for, or if you're buying milk at the grocery store. But in other areas of life, it's just an implicit price, like marriage or children, or Sandel's other lists here says criminal activity, right? It's implicitly priced. Racial discrimination, political participation, environmental protection, right? That's implicitly priced. Even human life. So are the economists right in saying that all of life is actually market-based behavior? Or is this overreach that goes beyond what capitalist economics should be able to do? That's the question, I think, at its heart. Completely right? Okay. I think you would find a lot of agreements among business majors for sure. I would suspect that a lot of non-business majors at this school would say, no way. It all depends on your perspective, I think. It definitely seems right that people go through life choosing the course of action that they think will maximize their personal utility. But a lot of people would prefer to think of themselves as doing that in a manner that does not explicitly price goods, or even implicitly price goods, because they think that some things are more valuable than money, or can't be tabulated in monetary terms. Okay, I want to talk about that in terms of another couple of examples, but I also want to take a quick break. So let's take a quick break, and then we can come back and look at some examples of ways in which market-based norms can be advanced into traditionally non-market arenas in order to make things more efficient, but possibly also have downsides as well. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick break.